Happy New Year 2023. We hope that this year holds great things for you and your family. Let it be more fruitful, successful and prosperous to you. And for those new and prospective farmers out there, I hope you've set achievable resolutions for this year, especially when it comes to farming. And we don't mind if you share some of those resolutions with us. At least let's brainstorm together and see what we can do together and how we can help each other when it comes to farming. Anywho, so back to our video today. Is it really possible to start your farm with no money? So today we're going to discuss some of the things that may convince you that it is actually possible, or it may not be possible for you to start your farming activity or your farming practice in whichever farm or whichever land that you want to start with. So stay tuned and let's get rolling. Back when I was 7 years old, my dad took my brother and I to a parcel of land that he had actually bought like 10 years before then at a place called Saba in Kitale. And the whole idea was just to go and show us where the land was located. It was land that he had bought like so long ago, and he had not yet visited that place since he had bought. So what he did was just to go and show us where the place was located. And when we got there, he actually could not believe that this was the same land, because we got a structure that had been built within the land, and just beside the structure within the farm, there was a lot of farming activity going on. Actually, we saw someone trying to do some sort of weeding in what appeared to be maize plantation. So we asked Dad, Kwani, what's happening? You've kept this a secret since. And then he actually looked as surprised as we were at seeing whatever it is that was happening in the farm. So to cut the long story short, someone had actually pitched tent in his farm and had actually taken advantage of the fact that this particular farm was not in use for quite a while. So he decided to pitch tent and start his farming activity in the farm. So my dad came to an agreement with him, as a gentleman that he is, that he may continue doing his farming activities, but at the end of every farming season, he expected to get 50% of what this guy was doing. And additionally, this guy would provide caretaking services to that piece of land. So what do we learn basically from this particular story? There are three things that we need to learn. First, when you want to start farming with no money, number one, observe around you. Is there any unused or spare land around you that you can start farming activities with? But in this case, don't follow what this guy did, who pitched tent without asking the owners first. It's always good to go and ask who the owners of the land are and see if you can come to an agreement on whether you can start doing your farming within that piece of land. Secondly, try and get workers who can actually do the job without having to pay them in such a way that they can benefit in a different way, such as setting some sections of your land for them to use for their own benefit. And third, make sure you start small as you think big, because as a man thinketh, so he is. Remember, this guy, after like 15 years of doing all these harvests and giving 50% to my dad, at the end of the day, he managed to raise a huge amount of money that was able to purchase that same land. So lessons learned: start small while thinking big, because the vision is what matters. A story is told of a lady who back in the village practiced maize farming. Now, upon every time that she would harvest, she would always do her calculations, her mathematics, and see that actually she used to get losses year in, year out. Every time she would incur costs, of course, of bringing a tractor in to plow the land, costs of harrowing the land, costs of weeding, and then of course eventually after harvesting, there are costs of drying the maize, packing them, having those packing boys to come and load onto, let's say, that particular lorry that will take it to the millers. And when it gets to the millers, they used to either reject the maize because of the quality, or sometimes when it's accepted, they give her at very low prices. So she used to get losses throughout all these 5 years. So she decided to sit down, and whenever we have these family get-togethers at the end of each year, she decided to sit down with her daughters, to have some sort of moshene. In Kenya, we call it moshene, but it's just more of, a talk with the daughters. So after listening to her story, and of course the losses that she had actually incurred through these 5 years, one of the daughters came out and, suggested that why couldn't she, do some sort of shift from maize farming and instead try to, practice kienyeji vegetable farming, do some sort of bee farming, set up an apiary, just a traditional apiary that has no costs. And then also, they also suggested that she goes into horticulture because people around the area had not done the same. And another reason why this first daughter had suggested that is because she had ready market where she was staying. Furthermore, the shift, this shift from maize farming to whatever it is that was being suggested would drastically reduce her costs. So remember, when she was doing maize farming, she had to bring a tractor, she had to employ security, she had to employ people to help her plow, harrow, or even just do some sort of weeding, the basic labor costs that are incurred whenever you do maize farming. So all these suggestions will drastically reduce her costs of production. And of course, we know sometimes people erect scarecrows to scare wild animals. So that was one of the suggestions she got from this first daughter with regards to her security, that she didn't have to, since the farm was already fenced, she didn't have to employ security to, guard her vegetables. Of course, bees don't need security, and of course, the horticultural part. So the scarecrows would do. So she was just told to erect like 5 scarecrows around the farm to hold for security. So the second daughter suggested that she could actually collaborate with her when it comes to livestock farming. And she suggested that, they should go ahead and, purchase, livestock when they are young, instead of purchasing mature, because they'll reduce the cost. When you purchase when they are young, the costs are low. So this was a collaboration suggested by the second daughter. Now, there's a neighbor of theirs who was passing by to drop off a male heifer that he had borrowed from this lady to go and, the way in the village you borrow a heifer to go and, mate, the other animals that you have. So this particular neighbor eavesdropped what this lady and the daughters were talking about. And one of the things that the neighbor asked them is if they wanted, some materials to do the construction for the place of the shed where the livestock will be held. And the reason was he had actually just completed an apartment building in his farm and was looking for where to dispose the waste material. Remember, when you're doing construction, you always have waste timber, waste iron sheets, and all that. So he asked them if they really wanted the materials, since he was looking to dispose them off. And of course, the lady gladly accepted because she really needed these materials without any cost. And this guy here was ready to do that as an appreciation for being given a male heifer to go and mate, his own cows back at his place. Additionally, this neighbor suggested to them, because he had actually dropped a lot of this moshene, he suggested to them, instead of doing goat farming, they should start with sheep farming, because sheep farming required cheaper maintenance. And based on research, he had actually noticed that the price of the price of mutton, for example, and the price of lamb around that particular area had actually skyrocketed. So it would just make business sense to start with something that was much cheaper to maintain, but at the same time bring a lot of profit. So they kind of gave them the idea that they could start somewhere with the materials that they needed, free of charge. Now, her youngest daughter was an IT guru, still is basically an IT guru. So she suggested that she uses these online platforms to get directly to the buyers of her produce, her prospective buyers, because one of the things that would make her lose a lot of money were brokers. So she would, do farming, come up with, ideas on what to do. But at the end of the day, because she didn't know who the purchasers of this produce were, she decided to use brokers. So brokers buy from her and then they go sell. So she used not to make good money. So the youngest daughter suggested that they use technology and online platforms, social media, to be able to market their products. She even showed her some of the WhatsApp groups around the area she lived where people used to market agricultural products, and most of the people around the youngest daughter's place of residence loved, these traditional kienyeji, vegetables. So the mother, after a while, decided to think about it. and she did her own research and went online. These days women are digital, so she went online, tried to research here and there, and she thought she came to a conclusion that actually all these things were workable, and she could try out and see if maybe things could be different. Needless to say that 3 years down the line, her farming business grew. It outgrew what she used to do. She quadrupled in terms of profits, but used less than half of what she used to use as a cost of production. And additionally, she told me that she got contracts from companies to actually grow their produce, and they would cater for all the costs involved. So her only thing was to provide the land and the manpower, but these contractual agreements would invest their own money to be able to grow from planting up to harvesting, and they themselves come to the farm to pick the produce up and go, and they will still pay at the market price. So what do we learn from this second story? Number one, let me stand. Always keep learning. Never be scared to learn new things. Keep learning. Secondly, utilize the networks around you and try and see if you can collaborate the same way this lady collaborated with the daughters to do sheep farming. Thirdly, make sure you hustle hard. Hustle hard, never give up. This lady could have given up after 5 years of doing maize farming. Don't give up, always hustle hard. As long as you keep researching and learning new things, you can always have a shift that would actually bring better results at the end of the day. So hustle hard. Number 4, keep your eyes open for new opportunities and new ideas in the market, and make sure, and this goes to number 5, look out for deals that are in the market, because when you get the deals, look at auction centers, look at Facebook Marketplace, look at all these platforms that offer deals for you, because you'll get them at very, very cheap prices. Another thing is you can also consider funding, looking for funding. As I've told you, this lady entered into a contractual agreement with a company called Sweet Tunda that contracted her to do sweet potatoes, some sort of variety of sweet potatoes that had vitamin K. So you can also consider doing contractual agreements, and in so doing you get funding for doing that specific kind of farming. That is something you also need to consider through this particular story. Number 7, get experience from farmers who are around you. Remember the neighbor who came and gave his own experience and tried to suggest some of better rare sheep than goat? Get experienced neighbor farmers who can give you ideas here and there. Another thing also to learn, create good relations with your neighbors. Try and see what you can give them once in a while to create good rapport. And always remember, sometimes through these good relations, you can do what we call barter trade. One of the things that they did is this neighbor gave out, the lady gave out the male heifer, and in return you found out that the neighbor, even if it was not planned, the neighbor decided to give her some of the materials she used to construct her shed. Anyways, I hope in this 2-part series you have learned one or two things about starting your farm without money. If these are challenges that you think you can surpass, it's always good to consider trying. You can consider doing all these things that we've talked about. These 2 stories have given us a glimpse at what people practically can do without having to invest a lot of money in starting out their farming business. Now, it's not always rosy and easy, as these 2 stories have become. I have 2 more other stories that depict the challenges that people who started without money or some sort of external resource experienced. And it's only prudent that I be able to tell you, to be able to know some of the challenges you'll experience when you start your farm with no money. So make sure you stay tuned for the next episode. And if you're new here, kindly remember to subscribe. This is Africa Farming, a channel focused on new generation farmers and new entrants in farming who are willing to learn new farming practices. So take a second or two to subscribe and hit on the notification bell so that YouTube will be able to notify you whenever we upload that next video that is a sequel to this particular episode. It's been a pleasure to host you guys here. At least some rain has just been seen. It's not that it has rained well, but at least it's not that dry as it was like 2-3 weeks ago. So we hope and pray that God will continue opening the clouds for us so that rain may continue falling, so that this year we may actually plant as we've planned to do with Jackton, our farm manager. Otherwise, I have nothing else to say until the next video. Changamka na ukulima. Bye bye. Asanteni sana.